The federal leader debate passes and the election draws closer. I'm Marco Perri. Welcome to the Perri platform. Today I want to dedicate the show to highlighting the federal leaders debate. It's probably perfect for you if you missed it, and it's also good if you just want to hear a general discussion on what went down. As I was gathering my thoughts, I realized my commentary can really be broken down into two different categories. The first is comments on the format of the debate, and the second is comments about the leaders themselves. Now, before we even get to that, I just want to point out, the debate was highly entertaining. If nothing else, it was fun to see the leaders try and tear each other apart. And that leads me to my first comment. Who thought it would be a good idea to have debate sections without defined speaking times? All that really happened was they would get one person to initiate the so-called debate. They would speak for majority of the time. It was only like a minute or 45 seconds they would have. And then the other person would try to respond like a real debate. And what would happen? They would talk over each other and you wouldn't understand what was going on. That's partly due to the moderators giving them free rein. Now, let's be honest, everyone on that stage wants to get as much of their platform out as possible. They want to trash talk as much as possible because they want to win as many seats as possible. They're going to hog as much time as they can, and it seemed like that was not thought about. Just the way it was set up, it encouraged a free-for-all. It actually encouraged you to talk over each other, and to me it just seemed obvious that a solution could have been presented to actually block off time for specific people, and when it wasn't your turn, your mic would be turned off. But at the same time, that did lead to massive entertainment value. And my next comment really about the format was that was just too short. A leader answering a question for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, it's simply not enough and it makes them come off as superficial. Really, you can just say thank you to the person asking the question. You can get into the surface level of an answer, but you can't really dive into your platform. And to some people, it's not enough. I wanted to hear more. Why couldn't these guys have blocked off maybe 3 hours or 3.5, maybe 4 would be too long, but 2 hours? That's not enough. How much more money would it have taken them to buy that extra hour? They seem to have a bunch of money to flaunt around, so why not invest in something important like this debate? That made no sense to me. In the future, I'd really like to see some more Joe Rogan podcast style conversations. These debates are really fun and we do still need them, but something like an actual discussion with a one-on-one, the politician and an interviewer, with an interviewer who's actually going to ask hard questions, that would be super valuable and we can actually learn more about the platform and why exactly they hold certain stances. On stage, all we really saw was trash talking and people dodging questions and trying to be too strategic about it because it's pretty much a competition. When we boil that down, take it back down to a conversation, I feel like that's better for the audience. But maybe after that, you can still have your debate because you do need to interact with your competitors to try and take down each other's ideas and establish why yours is better. But because nobody was even able to establish their own platform, given the structure of the debate, it made things a little bit harder to understand. We didn't really know where people stood at first, and it makes you susceptible to certain lies. People on that stage can really say whatever they want about you, and because you haven't had a chance to explain your platform, it's that much more believable. Having something like this Joe Rogan conversation should be something that politicians explore in the future. I know Bernie Sanders was on one time. That must have been fun. I also noticed varying degrees of controls that the moderator had. Some moderators were very good at reining people in, making sure they stuck to their time, but there was also some moderators who had no control over the politicians. They spoke when they wanted to speak, they ignored her commands, and they kept going, even when time was over, and that affects the time of other people to give their thoughts. Overall, we need to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen again. A strong moderator is really crucial to having a good debate. If they can't control them, the contestants, well, nobody can. And finally, I just want to applaud the audience for not applauding during the discussion. Sometimes audiences get too riled up and they make too much noise and it takes away from what's happening on stage. But thankfully, these guys were civil and they're respectful. There were some laughs and some claps here and there, but nothing too over the top. And now we go into the performances. This is the really interesting part. So I'll start with Scheer. He was grilled, first of all, on his lack of a platform. He's released information here and there, his environmental plan, his plan on taxation, but overall, the complete conservative platform is nowhere to be seen, and that's a major downfall for him. Every time he was grilled on that, he essentially had no response, and I'm not too sure you can even have a response for that. Why isn't it out? Did you not know you're running for the prime ministership? Maybe it's a strategic decision, but at the same time, I believe people deserve to have that information. Now, Scheer also stuck to his original tactic of simply going after Trudeau, and that doesn't make sense. It really comes down to him and Trudeau. He doesn't really care about Jagmeet, doesn't care about May. For him to bicker with them, it would essentially be a waste of time. He wants to go after Trudeau to make Trudeau lose votes, and maybe he does want to compliment Jagmeet actually to have some of the Liberal voters go to the NDP, which will bring the Liberals down as well. There's a couple ways to go about that, but there's no feasible strategy that involves him trying to tear down the NDP or the Green Party, and he stuck to that. Overall, I would say Justin Trudeau adopted a very similar approach to Andrew Scheer's. His idea was to focus on the main competitor, which is the Conservatives. He used projections often. He talked about Harper, talked about Doug Ford. He wanted to paint Scheer in that same conservative light. It's probably a good strategy though, maybe not about Harper, but Doug Ford for sure. Ontario voters are not too happy about what he's done, and if we fear that Scheer will be a shadow of Ford, bring about these same issues but on a nationwide level, well, that's not very appealing. Actually, it's funny, because Trudeau had Scheer on his mind so much that he started to reference Jagmeet Singh as Scheer. Multiple times, they were in the middle of an exchange and he would say Singh. Or no, he wouldn't even say that, he would say Scheer. Then Singh would be confused, like, what? You're confusing me with Scheer? That makes no sense, we look nothing alike. Well, it's because Trudeau had that one-track mind going. It was all pretty much about Scheer and trying to take back some voters from the NDP and the Green Party. Trudeau was also grilled for his pipeline purchase, his corruption scandal, and even brownface came up time and time again. He also was talked about by having lackluster environmental targets. Elizabeth May actually said that about everyone, except for herself. Now, personally, I was surprised that nobody touched on Trudeau's past promise of election reform. It was part of his campaign when he ran for the first time, and he straight up lied about it. He said he was going to do it, and he never did. That would have been something to hammer him over the head about, and maybe if another party adopted that, I know the Green Party does, it would be a major selling point for voters. Now we get to Jagmeet. Trudeau says nice things but doesn't deliver. That was pretty much what he parroted the whole night. I think he said it at least a dozen times. There's not much substance with his answers, and he was going down that route. The same slogan approach, repeating it over and over again to try and paint Trudeau as X, and it makes sense. Jagmeet really is trying to leech voters off of the Liberals. If people feel the Liberals don't have a good chance, or they don't like Trudeau anymore, well, the next best party that aligns with their vision is the NDP probably, or the Green Party, and Jagmeet's all about that. They want to siphon. It was an interesting exchange he had too with Bernier about deplatforming, and I found that key. It's something critical about Jagmeet's personality. Bernier was saying, you didn't want me here because I have different ideas than you. What do you have to say about that? Jagmeet essentially says, yeah, I want you to be deplatformed because I don't like the way you think. And that's what he's really about. He claims to be about diversity, but when it comes down to diversity of thought, arguably the most important form of diversity, different ways of thinking, and you want that in your government. You want the best ideas possible, and you want to squash bad ideas. You can only do that by having the ideas present. Singh doesn't like that. He wants you to think the way he does, or he wants you to be deplatformed. Not the best look, and it's a reason why I cannot support the NDP. Now we might as well talk about Bernier. His main thing was about balancing the budget, and he also brought forward another right-wing voice. Typically it would just be the Conservative Party, maybe the Bloc depending on their stance that year, but it was actually pretty cool to have more of a balance now. One of the things that Bernier got hit over the head with really hard was the denial of climate change. It's a terrible stance to have, and that itself has eliminated his chance of winning that many seats. It's a crucial issue for a lot of Canadians, and his active denial of that is very off-putting. I do like his idea of balancing the budget within 2 years. That's a very important thing, but Bernier does tend to err more towards the right than I would like. Now we get to Elizabeth May. She is obviously very heavy on the environment, as expected, and that was her main thing that night. She did get grilled on the realism of her projections by Bernier, and Trudeau and her also had a very interesting exchange. Trudeau said that targets are not a plan. Elizabeth May's whole thing was about targets. She's saying that the targets that the other parties are putting forward are not enough, and she has the targets. Well, Trudeau came forward and said that's not enough either. You need an actual plan, we have one, and it's implemented, and we're seeing results. We don't even know if what you're proposing is realistic, and I found that very interesting. Something that May wasn't able to respond to because of the time, first of all, but I would have liked to hear what she had to say about that. And finally, we have Yves from the bloc. He only cares about Quebec. That was very obvious. He has a one-track mind, and he likes these separatist notions. Not much more to say there. So after listening to all these people talk, there was one thing that I was left with, and that was the sense that there is a glaring weakness within all the choices. It's something that I felt for a long time, and it also leads me to believe that we have a weak pool of leaders here. So with Scheer, he's not the strongest on the environment. He does have some ideas, he has a plan, but I'm not too sure it's the best one. And he's also withholding his complete platform. Not something I like to see. Then we get to Trudeau. He has some major character flaws. He's not trustworthy. He lies about things, and he's openly involved in corruption scandals. Then we also have to ask about his stature. In the world stage, Trudeau is not respected, and he is openly mocked by a lot of other world leaders. I'm not too sure he's the best fit. Then you have the problem of nepotism. Why is Trudeau in this position? It's largely because of his last name, not so much about his own credentials. I don't like that either. Then you have Elizabeth May. She's very strong environmentally, but some of her other ideas are objectionable, at least to me. I don't think she's the complete package. If we could have her just in charge of running environmental initiatives, I think that'd be good. But as the holistic leader of a country, I don't see it with the Green Party. Then you have Maxime Bernier. He's a climate denier. We can't have that in leadership in today's day and age. How about Jagmeet? He's non-cooperative. As I mentioned before, he is actually against this diversity of thought, and he's willing to deplatform other leaders because he is strongly opposed to what they believe. He doesn't want to talk about why they're wrong and try to show them a better way, which is what a real leader would do. Instead, he just wants to silence them. I don't like where that's heading. Tied with the Marxist notions of his party's origins, it's a recipe for disaster. And there's one more thing I want to mention too about the non-cooperative nature of Jagmeet. He also mentioned things like standing up to Trump and China and whatnot. Well, I don't know if he realizes, but Canada and America are allies. It can't just be not working with them because you don't like the way he thinks. I'm not too sure he's leadership material, and even on top of that, they have some extremely bad policies that will bankrupt the country. Even Elizabeth May herself, somebody with some high spending ticket items in her platform, called out Jagmeet. How are you going to pay for this dental care for everybody? How are you going to do it? She said taxing the rich is not reliable because they have other means of moving the money around. They have access to good lawyers. They can just leave Canada, and it's all very true. Jagmeet had no idea how to respond to that because all he thinks about is just taking down the rich. And we can see that through his policy here. May realized it too, and I'm glad she called him out for that. Then finally, you have the Bloc Québécois. They only care about Quebec, and they like these separatist notions, and they cannot be running a country with a preference for literally just one province. So who do you pick from this lot? What's the ideal outcome? Currently, I'm undecided. I really do need to think about this some more, and I do feel like I have to think strategically about where I'm going to vote. I feel like a minority government is the best possible outcome though, whether that's minority liberal or minority conservative. It'll force some collaboration hopefully by relying on the strengths of the differing parties, and if it doesn't work, they can always pass a vote of no confidence and we can vote again. I'm not really sold on any leader here for the long run, especially with a majority, and I think that's something we want to avoid as Canadians. Let's force this minority to occur, and it brings up this concept of voting your conscience or voting strategically. It's a big problem, and even with that, I'm undecided. There's really benefits to both here. It all really comes down to a fundamental issue though, and that is election reform. It needs to be something that we talk about and something on the ballot. It's shameful that Trudeau promised it and didn't follow through. One reason why they didn't follow through is because the Liberals have historically benefited from our system. The same can be said about the Conservatives, and a lot of small parties have suffered. Having something different, like a more proportional representation system, would allow for more ideas to get into politics, and we wouldn't be pigeonholed into Trudeau or Scheer. This all really makes me think too that we should find ways to encourage more talent in politics. How can these people really be the best our country has? I refuse to believe that. It makes no sense to me. We need more options. The environment in politics is deadly though, and it gets more toxic as time goes on, so I kind of see why people who are good intentioned don't want to get involved in the mix. It's a roadblock for a lot of qualified individuals who could make a change in government. Think about it really. On a daily basis, you're being torn down by the media, by your opposition. If you're somebody with a family, you have kids, I don't know if you want to expose them to that sort of toxicity. The way we're doing politics right now with the attack ads and whatnot is complete nonsense, and we have to bring this idea of honorability back to the game. So that's about it for today. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review and share, and you can also find me on Twitter at Perri Platform. I'll see you soon.